everyone. My name is Annie Kate Watson, and tonight I have the honor of co-chairing the Park Scholarships Class of 2023 William C. Friday Award Committee. On behalf of the Park Scholarships Program here at NC State University, I would like to thank all of you for joining us for the presentation of the 24th Annual William C. Friday Award. We'd especially like to welcome a few people here this evening. We have several friends from Girls on the Run: Aisha Edwards, Carol Kautsky, and Helen Nance. We'd also like to thank John Dole, the Interim Dean for the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, for being here, as well as Paola Stein, the Dean of the College of Education. We know it's a big night at NC State, not only with the Park Scholarships Program celebrating the 24th Annual William C. Friday Award, but also because NC State's 24th ranked football team plays later. So we're especially grateful that you've made the time to be here to celebrate this outstanding achievement. The Park Scholarships Program was established 26 years ago by the Park Foundation, a charitable organization named for Roy H. Park, a 1931 graduate of NC State. Since the inaugural class of 25 Park Scholars more than 20 years ago, the program has grown into a vibrant community of more than 160 current undergraduate scholars and approximately 1,000 alumni. This award is named in honor of William C. Friday, who served as the president of the University of North Carolina system for 3 decades and was also a strong supporter of the Park Scholarships Program since its inception. For the first 14 years of the award's existence, William C. Friday personally met with representatives from each Park Scholars class to select the recipient. Now, each class meets with the current USC system president, Peter Hans, to select someone that embodies President Friday's dedication to scholarship, leadership, service, and character. Although Chancellor Randy Woodson was not able to join us tonight, he has pre-recorded a message to share a little bit more about President Friday's legacy.
I'm Randy Woodson, Chancellor of NC State. On behalf of the university, I'd like to welcome you to the presentation of the 24th Annual William C. Friday Award. This award was established in 2000 and is presented to individuals who carry on Bill Friday's dedication to leadership, scholarship, service, and character. The recipient of the William C. Friday Award is selected by the senior class of Park Scholars each year with the input from the UNC system president. Mr. Friday was a longtime advocate for the Park Scholarships Program. He often remarked that his annual meetings with the Park Scholars were among his favorite meetings each year because he valued the opportunity to sit and talk with these bright young people. Mr. Friday was an alumnus of NC State, and during his time here, he was Student Senate President and earned a bachelor's degree in textile engineering. He went on to serve our country in the U.S. Navy Reserve in World War II and received his law degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In 1956, Mr. Friday became the president of the then 3-campus University of North Carolina. In the 1971 General Assembly, legislation was passed to merge the 15 state universities and the North Carolina School of Arts into the University of North Carolina system. A few months later, in March of 1972, Mr. Friday was chosen to lead the entire system. And during his time as president, he had significant roles in the creation of the Atlantic Coast Conference and the formation of the Research Triangle Park. He remained in that role until his retirement in 1986, becoming the longest-serving president of the system in the 20th century. Bill Friday was a transformational leader in public higher education and was known to always put others first. I, along with countless other leaders in higher education, benefited from his wise advice and counsel. Through his distinguished career, he modeled public service at its best, marked by integrity, courtesy, humility, and perseverance. Mr. Friday set the standard for the value and importance of education in this state and well beyond. We continue to honor this legacy through the William C. Friday Award. And I'd now like to invite Beckett Stillman, class of 2023, to the podium to present this year's William C. Friday Award.
We appreciate Chancellor Woodson taking the time to share about Friday's impact and legacy with both NC State University and the Park Scholarships Program. As Chancellor Woodson stated, each year, the senior class of Park Scholars selects an individual who emulates Friday's dedication and excellence in leadership, scholarship, service, and character to receive the William C. Friday Award. Previous recipients for the William C. Friday Award include Keith Fishburne, Special Olympics of North Carolina CEO, Maggie Kane, a Place at the Table founder and executive, Tom Ross, President Emeritus of the UNC system, and most recently, Julius Tillery, artist, figure, and leader in environmental, agricultural, and racial justice in North Carolina. This year, we are very excited to present the Friday Award to Molly Barker, an educator, social entrepreneur, and visionary. Molly is from Charlotte, North Carolina, where she first founded Girls on the Run International, the self-esteem, youth development, and healthy lifestyle program that has taught and inspired more than 2.5 million girls. In 2013, Molly retired from Girls on the Run International to serve on the Commission for Political Reform, a group tasked by the Bipartisan Policy Committee. This experience working to close the political divide drove Molly to start her second nonprofit, the Red Boot Way, which teaches active listening and profound curiosity when confronted with differing perspectives. The Park Scholarships class of 2023 is excited to have Molly with us today because of her commitment to unraveling societal status quos and fostering community building dialogue. We felt these themes not only honor Friday's legacy, but are also representative of the changes our own class hopes to make in the future. It is my extreme pleasure to present Molly Barker with the Class of 2023 William C. Friday Award.
Thank you.
We're going to take a picture.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Here, we can
Yeah, we'll put it right here.
change the slide.
Hi. I feel like I'm in the dark. Do we need to turn up the lights a little bit? Who did that? They came down and then now can they come back up? We can use a Ouija board in the dark. That's all right. I'll just talk like this. Should I wait a minute? I work with third graders. Nothing is ever planned. Okay, there we go. All right, cool. Okay, first of all, I remember when I got the phone call that I had won this award. It's kind of like you remember where you were when you heard amazing historical events. I was throwing the ball with my dog TJ in a field, and I was kind of taken aback by it. So I'm still sort of breathless from it. Thank you so much. I look at the previous winners, and I feel incredibly humbled by that, and I just want to thank the seniors for just thinking that I'm worthy of this. Like, that means a lot. So thank you so much. And to the rest of you, thank you for coming. I'm never quite certain what I'm going to say, which is kind of terrifying and exciting at the same time. So we're just going to go on a little journey for the next 30 minutes and see what happens. I guess that would be one of my first lessons, is that I've learned that if I speak from the heart, I can't go wrong. So that's kind of how I do the things. I do want to start and first say that I am most notably the founder of Girls on the Run. It'll probably be the main thing on my tombstone, or when they have my obituary, the main thing that they say, but I am also a mother. I do lots of other things. But I am happy to say that I'm still alive. And I say that because a couple years ago in Women's History Month, a little girl in the program wrote an essay on the not dead founder of Girls on the Run. And it was so cool. She had the essay, and at the very last line of it was, "And she's still alive." And I was like, yes, I'm still alive. So I think I want to position my remarks around two stories. I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories, and I love kids. So the first two stories that I want to share with you are about two kids that I met. The first one, I do a lot of traveling around the country and meet with a lot of our chapters, our councils. And so I get to hang out with third, fourth, and fifth graders, which are pretty much the coolest human beings on the planet. And I was visiting this particular school. I went in, got my name badge, did all the things that you're supposed to do to follow the rules. And the little girls of Girls on the Run were out on a field, and they were waiting for the Not Dead founder to arrive. And I get my name badge, and I'm descending the stairs, and these children see me, and they come running. And, you know, that itself is a fantastic feeling, to be loved like that, right? And they're running at me, and somebody, their coach, had taught them about the aerodynamics, the importance of kind of forming a goose formation. So the first little girl is the fastest, and all the other girls are fanning out behind her. And she gets about 8 feet from me, and she just stops dead in her tracks, and she throws her hands back like this. And then she gets this position, looks at me. She goes, "Are you Molly Barker, founder of Girls on the Run?" And I was like, "Yeah, I am." She goes, "Well, girl, you don't look anything like your picture." And I was like, "Okay, that's fine, you know, I get it, okay." And then she said, "But that's all right. We learned in lesson 18 last week that they airbrush all those pictures anyway." So that is story number one, right? So how we start, you know, kind of perfect, and then the world wants to begin to layer and name and label and put us into little tiny boxes and make us look perfect or behave perfectly. Story number one. So the second story, I was visiting with a group of girls, speaking at a middle school girls, which is by far the hardest audience to speak to. And I was asking the girls, I was like, "So what is the thing, you know, the thing that is just you, that is, you know, no one else can be that thing. It lives inside of you, and you came onto the planet with it, and, you know, it's there." And so one girl said personality, somebody said, you know, your spirit, and all of those things were great, but they weren't exactly what I was looking for. And finally, this girl raises her hand, and I said, "What is it?" She goes, "Your essence." And I was like, "That's the word. That's it. That's what I'm looking for." And I said, "What is your name?" She goes, "Essence." And I thought, her parents did her good. They did well there. So this is kind of the context that I want to start this presentation with. There's the beauty of who we are, right? The essence of who we are, the thing that makes you undeniably you. And then somewhere along the way, the world begins to want to box that in and to name it and to somehow define it in ways that may not allow that essence to feel liberated. And so I will share a little bit about the founding story of Girls on the Run. So I am 62 years old. I was born in 1960 and was a child of the 60s and 70s during the civil rights and the women's movement. And my mother was not a child of that generation. So it became very odd when my mother started doing things that I had never seen her do. And what was happening was my mother, at age 45, 46, was coming out from underneath all those expectations that women of her generation had had. And I got to witness it. And one of the things that my mom started doing was running. Now, this was 1971, 72. Women of her generation did not run. And just to give you a portrait of my mom, she was about 5'8", and her hair made her like 6'3". You know that Southern woman, right? The tall hair. She played golf. She was, you know, we lived in a middle upper income neighborhood, and at 5 in the morning, she would leave the house and go running because she didn't want the neighbors to see her. She also started meditating. She started practicing yoga. She started doing a lot of things that a woman of her generation just didn't do. And I was able to witness someone who had been so stifled by cultural and societal expectations. I was able to witness her blossom. And one morning she asked me if I'd like to go on a run with her. And I was probably 14 at that critical age where the boxes are starting to come down. You know, it's like when girls are beginning to develop and we don't know who we are in this changing body. And she said, "Would you go run with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to know what you do out there in the dark in the mornings. What happens to you?" And so the two of us started running. And I want you to know that it was during those early morning hours where our feet would be in sync with one another and our breath would be in sync with one another, where I felt the most alive. It's like the essence of who I was could thrive. All of the things that a 14-year-old was feeling about not being good enough or pretty enough or smart enough or whatever it was enough for girls of my generation, I just felt completely whole. And that is where the seed of Girls on the Run was planted, I'm quite certain. We would run and never say a word, but we'd have that experience with each other. And that was about age of 14. The other thing that happened at the age of 14 was I was at my friend Beth's house. And I know there's some children in the room. If anything that I share may require some conversation on the way home, I encourage you to do that. I was at my friend Beth's house, and there was a cabinet off in the corner of the living room that began to call our name. So we went over there, we mixed up a bunch of things. I'm quite sure no one in the universe had ever had whatever it was we mixed up. We drank them, and about, 2 hours later, I called a boy named Robbie, and I told him that I loved him. And Robbie did not know who I was. He went to another school, but y'all, it was so intoxicating, right? Both literally and figuratively. Suddenly, I wasn't the invisible girl anymore. I was seen, I felt seen. And that begins that struggle between the essence of me and the layered me, the veiled me. You know, the essence of me found peace and joy and all of me when I was running and when I was doing the things that I loved. And then there was the veiled me that was trying so hard to fit in, to belong, and to be loved and liked and popular and all the things that I thought I was supposed to be. So I went on, I graduated high school, won all kinds of awards, went on to college, won more awards. You would have never known if you looked at me that I was struggling with addiction. I went on and competed at an elite level in sports, did several Ironman triathlons, had a sponsor. You would have looked at me, you would have never known that I was struggling with addiction. And on July 6, 1993, I hit bottom. And I called my big sister, Emily. I wish for you a big sister or a person like this in your life. I called her and I said, Emily, I have two choices. I'm either going to move to California, which is the geographic cure. I'd tried a lot of other cures. I'd tried changing boyfriends. I'd tried changing jobs. I'd tried changing a lot of things. Or I'm going to just disappear. I'm just going to end. And my sister did this thing that I have learned about leadership. She did not try to fix, save, correct, or even offer advice. She did nothing. She abided with me. She stayed with me. She listened. And I talked, and I talked, and I cried, and I talked some more. And eventually, she sat with all of that with me for a while, and then she said, can I say something? And I was like, yeah. And she said, Molly, I just want you to know that this too shall pass. Why don't you hang up the phone and see how you feel the next day? So that was July 6, 1993. I was 32. And on July 7th, 1993, the following day, I called in sick to my job. I was waiting tables at the time. And there was this huge thunderstorm off in the distance. And I remember thinking, I want to go run. Like, it'd been a while since I'd run. But this storm was like frightening, lightning, big clouds, darkness on the horizon. But there was this voice. And you have that voice in you. It's the voice from the other side, or the voice of knowing with a capital K, that tells you, I know you know it, you have it. And that voice said to me, Molly, run. So I put on my running clothes, I descended the steps from where I was staying at the time. I was kind of couch surfing, because I didn't have a ton of money at the time. Descended the stairs and set off on this run. And it was about mile 4 of what ended up being a not much longer run. I became very conscious of the way the leaves on the trees were flipped upside down, and I could feel my ponytail as it moved behind me. I could feel the sweat as it fell down across my skin. I could feel like the earth was pushing my feet forward. And I just had an experience where for like 8 steps, I experienced the all of me, the essence that I had forgotten existed. And I realized at that point, for like 32 years of my life, I'd been allowing other people, other systems, other words to define this thing that is indescribable. And when I came sort of out of that and I walked home, I knew that something had changed. And so for the next 3 years, things changed. I just became more aware of the words and the systems and the labels and the things that seem to want to some control this, right? To keep us controlled. And I decided that I thought it would be pretty cool to do something for girls, mainly because that was my experience around that stereotyping of feeling trapped in the girl box. I would like to do something for girls that would give them a space to experience all of them, the essence of them, and then develop tools of resilience on how to sort of combat some of the veiling and the expectations. So I did a lot of reading and a lot of research and came up with the first curriculum for Girls on the Run. And I remember taking it to the school where I had been a teacher and also attended, and I went to the after-school coordinator and I said, hey, I want to do this program called Girls on the Run. It's this kind of character development program. I didn't really have the words yet. For those of you that are entrepreneurs, you'll discover that you may not have the words at the beginning, but then they start to come. I'm just going to do this thing, and I'll never forget the after-school coordinator said, oh, that sounds cute. I can remember thinking, like, cute? This is going to be a species-level transformational shift in the way girls and women perceive themselves. It's going to eliminate the objectification of women and, like, end sexism. But I did not have those words. I also did not have the courage to say that out loud. And so I just sort of, fell back into the default good white Southern girl and went, oh, it is cute. Can we do it? And he said yes. And so I will never forget when those first 13 girls came, and I will tell you now, the capital knowing, the knowing with a capital K, when they first showed up and we did the first lesson and they walked away, and I was like, this is it. This is it. Like, I know why I'm here. And so you understand a little bit about the curriculum, it is a 10-week program. The girls are looking at some values clarification, kind of getting to know who they are. The second half is how to get along with others, and the last half is they develop a community service project where they are figuring out, now that I know who I am and who I am in my peer group, let me go do something good in the world. And I do just have to share one community service project that I just still find very humorous. I was coaching some kids, and they decided they wanted to do holiday greeting cards for a retirement community across the street from the school. And I was like, great. So I bring in the construction paper and the puffy glue and the beads and everything that a girl will do to make a card weigh 400 pounds. And they make the cards, and I'm going through the cards. Now remember, this is for a retirement community, and I get to this one card, and on the front it has a little angel, and it says, Happy Holidays, and then I opened it up, and it said, May you rest in peace. And you know, this is when, if you choose to be a parent, this is a great opportunity to practice not laughing at your child's face. So I just was like, oh, that's great, let's keep going. And we took the card, and I'm sure the right lady got it, you know? The right lady got it. So the best part of this was the media picked up on Girls on the Run. This was before we had the internet, so there were not 1,000 channels or 1,000 ways to get the word out. And Runner's World did a piece, and slowly but surely the program grew mostly by word of mouth. And I also quickly identified that I'm not an Excel spreadsheet strategic thinker. So fortunately, those people came. And so I will just invite you to also really think about what you love to do and what you're good at. Spend time there. Don't focus so much on trying to correct what you don't like or what you're not good at, because guess what? There's people that love to do the things you hate. I cannot believe there are people who love Excel spreadsheets. There's probably some of you in this room. Yeah, you are, thank you for existing. So Girls on the Run grew and grew, and at this point, thanks to literally hundreds of thousands of volunteers and council directors, the program has reached, I think it's 2.3 million girls. And it's just continuing to grow exponentially thanks to amazing leadership. And so here's the next part of the story. I left Girls on the Run, and many people were surprised by that. I was even surprised by it. I figured I would be the not dead coach with the whistle around her, neck, cheering girls on for the rest of my life. But something started to happen where I started to feel sort of boxed in again, like the Girls on the Run founder, and I started to feel some expectations around that, and I wanted to speak up on other issues, and I wanted to do other things, and I felt like, oh, I want some more wings. So I left, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So about 3 weeks after leaving the organization, I get this letter from the Commission on Political Reform. And they were going to do a project in New York City, a think tank of about 28 people from all over the country who were going to explore ways we could get our elected leaders to speak more civilly with one another. Now, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. But it wasn't so funny back in 2013, right? And so I was like, why did you ask me? Like, I only work with children. And she said, exactly. I'm just kidding. She didn't say that. I said that. So I buy my suit, first suit I've ever owned in my life, at Target, and we go up to Washington, D.C., and I spend 3 years listening to people, trying to figure out what we can do to systemically change things so that people will speak more civilly to one another. And while I was there, I came up with this crazy idea. Wouldn't it be cool to do a program where we got elected leaders to train for a 5K together and also train with children in their district for the 5K and do a leadership curriculum together? And at the very end, all the people would come to Capitol Hill, and we would run joyfully in a 5K with unicorns and sparkles, and everybody would be happy, because I felt like if our leaders were in the company of children, not only would they be on their best behavior, but we would be able to talk about leadership from a really profound way. And so I got a sponsor, I got money, it was very exciting. Runner's World was on board. There were there were several congressional members that were on board, and we were 3 weeks away from the start of the program. We had kids all over the country engaged. And I get a phone call from one of the chair people of the event, a congressional member. And his chief of staff actually called me and said, we need to meet. And I was like, great. So I put on the Target suit and I go to Washington, and I go to his office, and he says, I think we need to go to the Capitol cafeteria for this meeting, which I did not know meant we need to be in a public place for this conversation to happen. So we go to the Capitol cafeteria, we sit down, I have an intern with me, my funder, the chief of staff, two of his folks, and he pulls up every document I've ever sent to him, puts it on the desk, slides it across to me, and says, I don't know who the hell you think you are, but there is no way we can do this. I'm sharing this with you because this is a failure. I feel like a failure, right? I've had this resounding success with a nonprofit and felt the just unsurmountable pressure to do something big again, and it's failing. It's failing. And I remember him saying something like, we could never use the words empathy, compassion. We can't, those words will not work here. We will be primaried out of the next election, were his exact words. And it was the first time in my life I experienced, like I was afraid I was going to lose control of my bodily functions. I was so scared. Like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know what to do now. There's children waiting. And so I did what I had been instructed to do in situations like that, which is deep breathing. And there's a form of breathing called Ujjayi breath, where you take in a deep breath, and it makes a sound like the ocean. Those of you that practice yoga may know what I'm talking about. And this is what it sounds like. So I say to him, I need to take a few deep breaths. And so I begin my Ujjayi breathing. And then he starts to talk, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm not done yet. And after about 6 or 7 breaths, I was present. I wasn't in fight or flight anymore. And we began to have a dialogue about how could we make this work. Inevitably, we did not make it work. I was not willing to give up on the words compassion and empathy in leadership. I had made a career of telling young women, your compassion matters. Standing up for others matters. Your empathy and your willingness to listen to other people and support them matters. And so I left that experience incredibly depressed. I felt like a fraud. I'd told girls that you could break that ceiling, you can go. And so I made another decision to go find out for myself, like, let's go see what happens. So I did what any middle-aged white woman with highlighted blonde hair would do. I rented a Mustang red convertible, bought a pair of red boots, and decided to drive from Charlotte to Las Vegas and back and interview anyone who would talk to me about the highly polarized state of the United States. And it began in Charlotte. I went to Williamsport, drove through every city, came through. I felt a little bit like Forrest Gump. I began to write about it. People were showing up in coffee shops and having this dialogue. And I want to tell you about 2 people. I met a housekeeper in Williamsport, and we were talking. She was the housekeeper at the hotel. And we were sitting by the side of the pool, and I said, what do you think's going on? What is going on with this highly polarized state? And she said, you know, it's just so hard. It's just so hard. You know, I have to work 2 jobs to make sure that my children have what they need. And then she went on to share with me that one of her children was struggling with some addiction, had gotten tangled up with the wrong people. And then she said, you know, all they want, all we want, really, is to be seen, to be heard, and to know we matter. And it was about a couple weeks later, I'm driving, and I'm stopped in a local coffee shop, and a guy wanders over. His name was Bill because he had it on his shirt. He was a truck driver. We started talking, and I said, what do you think's going on with the highly polarized state of the United States? And he goes, well, they just don't want to work. They just don't want to work. They want us to give them everything. And we started talking, and he went on to share that his son had been involved in a drunk driving accident and had been in a coma for a long time, and he began to cry. So I came back from that trip, and realized that I was not a fraud, that the thing that's going to change this is our willingness to listen, to be empathic, to be compassionate. I don't know any other way. The interesting thing is, it's got to start with me. I realized that that effort I was making in Washington was about trying to change them. But that effort has to begin with me. And so I wanted to sort of share with you sort of the, hold on a minute. What did I say? I'm very creative. You can tell I'm so creative with PowerPoints, can't you? That smiley face makes me creative. Leadership reminders to self, or as I prefer to call it, stuff I've learned about communicating and getting along with other people. So I came back from that event, from that trip, and I sat down with a couple of my mentors, and I said, let's download. What happened on that trip? What happened? That strangers were talking to me from the depths of their being, like they were not veiled. There was a essence there. And we must say this at first, though. As a white, older female, I walk into any situation with appearing non-threatening. I was talking about this at one point, and a friend of mine who's 6'4" and a black guy said, yeah, you just see me try to walk into a coffee shop in the middle of Arkansas and strike up a conversation with somebody. So I want to be sure that I own that. That was part of what I had going in my favor. But I came up with these things. These are the things that as I go into any situation, it's what helped make Girls on the Run successful. It's what I do when I'm entering into a difficult situation. It's a mindset. I have to be present. It's a practice. It's not something that just happens, y'all. You don't just become a good leader. It's a practice. You have to work at it. So I'll just read them out loud and be boring for a minute. I am essential to myself, my family, and my community. I matter. It's so easy to think that we don't matter in all this noise, but you do. And here's the beautiful thing. When you realize that you matter, guess what happens to everybody else? They matter. I possess the power to positively influence all those with who I come into contact. I am empowered. You don't know the influence you have on somebody. Every day as you walk by somebody, you just never know. You just never know. So just realize that you have a lot of power, a lot more than you think you do. I am wonderfully and imperfectly human with my own story and experiences. I am transparent. I remember the first time I spoke candidly about my addiction. I was terrified. I was terrified. What will they think? But after that presentation, I must have had 4 or 5 young women come up and say, I've struggled with this. I've struggled with addiction, or I've struggled with an eating disorder, or whatever it was. But it's yours to tell, not someone else. You have to only tell your story when you're ready to tell it. I can choose what and whom I allow to influence my mind, body, and personal environment. I am intentional. This is called boundaries. This is called boundaries. And I did not learn these until, the last 10 years. I have to have boundaries. If something is constantly wearing me down or exhausting me, I have to walk away from it and or stand up. Either way. I am more peaceful and centered when I take time every day to be in stillness. I am centered, grounded. Meditation is a part of my everyday, and I would encourage you as you proceed into the big world that you make it a part of your day. I humbly put aside my own agenda and listen with my whole heart before responding. I am present. This is a lot harder to do than you think. You have to clear your mind when you sit down with someone. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say before they're finished saying what they're saying. I approach my life and those in it with wonder and curiosity. I am curious. Imagine if you went to someone on the opposite end of the aisle and you approached a dialogue with them with curiosity rather than an already preconceived notion of what they're going to say. It changes things. Expressing gratitude is essential to my well-being and the well-being of my community. I am grateful. When I embody these values on a regular basis, I gain and experience compassion for myself and others. I am compassionate. And then the last one's just, when I live my life as outlined in these reminders, I have a new and joyful desire to be engaged. It's like I don't want to not engage. Why would I not? It's joyful to be in leadership positions and to engage. Okay. So I'm going to do Q&A in just a second, but I did want to finish with a story. There's so many. I was speaking at a group, with a group 5 or 6 years ago. First through fifth grade kids in a gym. And I just done this presentation. And the presentation was over, and the kids are leaving the room, and this little girl walks over. And she just stands in front of me. And I get down on a knee so that we're eye level. And I said, "What's your name?" And she said, "My name is Maddie." And I said, "Hi, Maddie, I'm Molly." And we just looked at each other. That was it. We didn't say a word. We just looked at each other. And then I said, "This feels good, doesn't it, Maddie?" She went, "Yeah, it feels good." And then she walked away. And I'm pretty sure that she remembered that. And if I had any guts for my presentation today, I would have come up here and just sat in a chair and stared at you for 30 minutes. Because I think that's how things change. It's just seeing each other. All right, does anybody have any questions?
So please raise your hand if you have a question, and either I or Sarah will come to you with a microphone. I can start us out with one.
I was going to say, this is a good practice in silence. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas for structural changes politically that could help civility on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, so the commission came up with 69 recommendations that included things like term limits, being less partisan on gerrymandering, figuring out how to set up the precincts and all that sort of thing. Voting rights and regulations, making it as available as possible for everyone. Yeah, there was a whole list of items. And actually, if you all just Google CPR Congress, it'll come up with all the recommendations, yeah. And it's true, it's funny, because that is not my forte. You can tell that I'm not the strategic, that's not how it was. And I was constantly on that commission saying, but what about like changing who we are, like having a conversation from a leadership perspective rather than changing the systems. But it takes both, right? You've got to have both. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Madeline Smith. I'm from the class of 2025. Your life trajectory so far has seemed very different than like what people are conditioned to think about, you go to college, get a job, maybe have a family. But your path has been very different. How have you dealt with comparison to your family, to your friends, to peers?
Thank you for that question. It's terrifying. It's been terrifying. It's also been liberating. To say, I don't know if you all know Glennon Doyle. She's a wonderful human that's doing a lot of great work. And I remember her once saying that every day she wakes up terrified because she knows she's pushing up against something. But at this stage of my life, I'm no longer terrified. I'm just completely joyful. So it's been a process of kind of like, doing like that. I will tell you a quick story. Parenting is another area where I have felt a lot of fear because my kids were raised very non-traditionally. One of them left high school to go work in New York City for a year and then came back and returned, but it wasn't guaranteed that he was going to finish high school. So, we've been, I think I have a spiritual belief too. I kind of have a sense of believing that there's a force greater than myself that is going to ensure it's okay. That's not a very helpful answer at all. Yeah. But you know what I love? I appreciate you noticing that it is hard sometimes. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Sophie Scher. I'm a park in the class of 2026. You spoke earlier with regards to the failed Capitol Hill run about them saying that compassion and empathy didn't have a place in their leadership. I know personally I strive for leadership at a high level, in a corporate. I know many people in this room strive for similar high stakes leadership. Do you believe that being compassionate in a high stakes leadership position helps, hinders, or a mix to someone in that position, and why do you think so?
I think it depends on the company. So I've done a little bit of work with companies and trying to engage them in this discussion. And I honestly believe that if you walked into a corporation at a high leadership level and practiced these, you would be changing things. I think this is how you can internally change the system, is by how you float through that system. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think it's possible, and I actually think it's happening more and more. I've been doing more work with companies that are like, you're kind of weird. How do you do what you do? And I'm like, this is how, Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anna. I'm in the class of 2026. So you talked earlier about after being in Girls on the Run for so long, you felt like it was placing you back into a box. Do you feel like that was because that wasn't what your essence was really for, or because you changed as you grew?
I think it's both. Brilliant question. So I think it's both. And I think, yes, I think it's both. I think what began to happen was I was taking on a role as the founder of Girls on the Run, which roles are another form of sort of confining us. There's nothing in the world wrong with a role. I just happen to be sort of adverse to them. Some people, we need people to have roles, but I just started to feel kind of caged in again. I also wanted to speak out more vocally on politics and was a little bit concerned, to be honest with you, that might reflect on the organization in a way that might not have been beneficial at the time. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ricky. I guess we're giving class year, so I'm class of 2002. Feels like yesterday. Thank you for your remarks. I really appreciate it. And the idea that we need to interact personally with other people to make that connection resonates with me. As an introvert, that can be difficult sometimes. I'm probably the only introvert here, I'm sure. And so sometimes we need a little bit of help, to do that. But one of the things that I think has been challenging is that we now live in a society where so much of our interaction happens, through these things, whether it's, direct communication or social media, where it does tend to be far less personal. What advice do you have in terms of how we can better approach that and how we can make that a part of our life that is enriching and not degrading? Or should we just avoid certain areas of communication altogether?
So my social media saved me during COVID. I was so pleased to be able to communicate with and see what other people were doing and how I was doing. It was very helpful. I would say that just like everything, it's being intentional, our intentionality around it, and being conscious of, is this pulling me in a way that is unhealthy for my mental health? And then having the courage or the wherewithal to put it away. I'm an introvert also, which I've learned that I can be extroverted, but I must refuel. Like I have to have solitude in order to be out in the world. It'll take me a week to get over this. Yeah. But I mean, it's just being conscious of our use of things. It's being conscious of how we're interacting with other people. It's being conscious of what thoughts do we already have about the person before we sit down and try to listen to them. It's that. We're so here, Yeah. Oh. Back there.
Hello, I'm Ariana. I'm in the class of 23, and I'm a former girl on the run.
Yay!
And I just wanted to ask, I know you shared a couple of stories about your moments with the program and the organization, but is there like any particular moment that was your favorite that really like made you feel like, yeah, this is what I'm meant to do?
Oh, there are just so many. There really are so many. I mean, there's a story in particular that I was coaching, and I won't go into the length of it, but we had a young woman in the group who had suffered a great deal of trauma in her life, and she had elective mutism. She had made the decision not to talk, which, she's taking care of herself. But over the course of the 10 weeks, I began to see her really open up. And at the very end, she was vocal with me and just shared how loved she felt in that group. And that was a remarkable moment for me that I will never forget. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey.
I'm Emmy. I'm from the class of 24, and you talk a lot about your community and serving your community. Having moved around like a lot, what do you consider your community, and how do you define them?
What do I consider my community? Well, as an introvert right now, I consider my community my 2 dogs and myself. I'm kidding. I've been really involved in the recovery community, so I definitely find some fellowship there for sure. I also have a close-knit group of about maybe 5 people, to be honest. I thought when I was younger that I needed to have a lot of friends. But there's five that I'm really close with that I can vent with, curse with, be painfully honest with, and then step back in and kind of be present for everybody else. But you can't name the community. I just say it's like 5 really good girlfriends. That's who it is.
Question, or?
I don't think so. Oh, one more? You can maybe just shout it out.
I'm Sasha, and I'm
Oh, that is a great question. I think it's what I've realized at this stage of my life is that the essence is ever present. It doesn't go anywhere. And it is kind of a constant for me to make sure to touch base with the essence. So sure, part of it was expressed through running, or it's expressed through parenting, or it's expressed through the roles. But there is an essence to me that I think is a little bit spicy and a little bit counter culture. Do you know what I mean? And that, as I get older, I'm beginning to define, that's kind of the essence of who I am. So in your remarks about kind of going against the grain, I think that is one of the reasons I was placed on the earth, is to sort of remind people that there's another way outside, the normal way. It's not saying that my way is the right way. But over time, that's kind of what I've identified, and I found it in all these other places. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Again, Molly, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We're so honored to have you. Park Scholarships Class of 2023 and any members of university leadership and administration, before you depart, please come to the stage for a class photo with Molly. This concludes our program. We appreciate your time and attention. Enjoy the football game, have a great night, and go Pack.